CNN thought they had control. It was supposed to be a routine interview, a typical back and forth where their anchor would press a conservative guest, frame the debate their way, and keep the conversation within CNN's narrative. But that's not what happened, because their guest that night wasn't just any spokesperson, it was Karoline Leavitt. And what was meant to be a controlled discussion quickly spiraled into something CNN never saw coming. The moment Karoline sat down, you could feel the tension in the air. The studio lights burned bright, the cameras rolled, and millions watched. On one side of the desk, Kate Baldwin, a veteran CNN host known for hard-hitting, no-nonsense interviews. On the other side, Karoline Leavitt, the fearless spokesperson for Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, calm, composed, and fully prepared for battle. The topic of the night? Biden's border policies and the ongoing immigration crisis. But make no mistake, this wasn't just about policy. CNN had a clear strategy going into this interview. Frame the conversation in a way that forced Karoline to either defend Trump's past policies or admit hypocrisy. Interrupt, challenge, and keep her on the defensive. And if all else failed, shut her down. It was a carefully crafted ambush, but they underestimated Karoline, because within minutes, the entire strategy backfired. CNN's audience, their producers, even Kate Baldwin herself, no one expected what came next. Because when the cameras started rolling and the first question dropped, Karoline didn't just answer, she took control. And by the time CNN realized what was happening, it was already too late. What happened next left the entire studio in shock. From the moment the first question left Kate Baldwin's lips, it was clear what CNN was trying to do. This wasn't a fair debate. This was a trap. Kate sat forward, shuffling her papers, her tone controlled but sharp. She knew exactly how to frame this conversation. Karoline, in 2019, the Trump administration used disaster relief funds to manage immigration. Now the Biden administration is doing the same. So why is your campaign criticizing Biden for something Trump also did? The audience waited. It was a classic setup, a loaded question designed to box Karoline in. She had two choices. 1. Defend Trump's past policies, which would open the door for CNN to paint him as hypocritical or inconsistent. 2. Attack Biden, but in doing so, risk admitting that Trump made the same decisions. Either way, CNN thought they had her cornered. Kate already knew the follow-up questions. If Karoline hesitated, even for a second, the conversation would spiral into a CNN-dominated narrative. The pressure was on. The audience leaned in, waiting for Karoline to stumble. But instead of looking flustered, she did something unexpected. She tilted her head slightly, adjusted her microphone, and smiled. "Kate, the difference is crystal clear." The moment she said it, Kate's expression shifted. Karoline wasn't scrambling. She wasn't caught off guard. She was in control. And in that instant, CNN's plan started to fall apart. Long before the cameras started rolling, CNN thought they had already won. Inside the studio, producers whispered behind the scenes, going over their strategy. This wasn't just another interview. This was an opportunity to discredit Trump's campaign, to frame Karoline Leavitt as unprepared, evasive, or defensive, to control the narrative before the 2024 election heated up. And then, Karoline walked in. The moment she entered the studio, everything changed. She wasn't flustered, she wasn't defensive, she was calm, confident, and completely in control. Her steps were measured, her expression unreadable. She wasn't just there to defend Trump, she was there to expose CNN. She sat down across from Kate Baldwin, CNN's seasoned host. Kate, on the other hand, was already on the offensive. She flipped through her notes, a subtle smirk on her lips. She had her questions prepared, her traps laid out. She expected Karoline to hesitate, to fumble, to react. But as Karoline clipped on her microphone and adjusted her blazer, she did something unexpected. She smiled, not a nervous smile, a knowing one, because she already knew this wouldn't go the way CNN had planned. And the moment the cameras started rolling, Kate Baldwin was about to realize just how wrong she was. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The CNN theme played, the cameras went live, and the stage was set. Kate Baldwin turned to the camera with her signature practiced ease. Good evening and welcome to this special broadcast. With me tonight is Karoline Leavitt, spokesperson for Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Karoline, thank you for joining us. Karoline nodded politely, her expression composed. "Happy to be here, Kate." But the pleasantries didn't last long. Kate wasted no time. She leaned in slightly, her voice sharp but neutral. "Let's get right to it." She flipped through her notes, pausing for effect. The audience watched closely. In 2019, the Trump administration used disaster relief funds to manage immigration. Now the Biden administration is doing the same. So why is your campaign criticizing Biden for something Trump also did? The trap was set. Kate framed the question perfectly, forcing Karoline into either defending Trump's past actions or admitting hypocrisy. The audience held their breath. This was it. CNN's moment. Karoline, however, didn't even blink. She simply tilted her head, adjusted her microphone, and smiled. "Kate, the difference is crystal clear." The studio stirred. Kate's brow twitched, just slightly. Karoline continued. In 2019, President Trump was dealing with a border crisis created by Obama's weak policies. He used every tool available to secure our nation. That is completely different from what we're seeing now. Kate raised an eyebrow. But at the core, isn't it the same action? Both administrations used disaster relief funds for immigration control. Karoline remained unshaken. The key difference, Kate, is control. Trump enforced border laws while Biden dismantled them. Trump deported illegal migrants. Biden is putting them up in luxury hotels at taxpayer expense, the audience murmured. The shift in energy was almost imperceptible, but it was happening. Kate realized it too. Karoline wasn't on the defensive. She was taking control. CNN's strategy was crumbling. Kate took a breath. She had to push harder. "So you're saying the Biden administration has no control over immigration?" Karoline didn't hesitate. "I'm saying Biden has completely failed." She leaned forward, her voice steady, deliberate. "Under Trump, illegal crossings plummeted. Under Biden, we've seen over 5 million illegal entries in just 2 years. That's not control, Kate. That's a catastrophe." The studio fell into silence. For the first time in the interview, Kate Baldwin looked uncertain. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. CNN had expected Karoline to stumble, to struggle, to hesitate. But she wasn't doing any of that. Instead, she was dismantling their entire narrative, piece by piece. And for the first time, CNN's strategy wasn't just failing, it was backfiring. Kate tightened her grip on her notes. She wasn't used to this. Karoline wasn't backing down, she wasn't stumbling, she wasn't getting defensive. She was controlling the conversation. This was not how it was supposed to go. Kate leaned in, raising her voice slightly. But in 2019, Trump also faced massive immigration waves. He also faced criticism for holding migrants in poor conditions. Why was it right under Trump but wrong under Biden? The audience shifted. It was a clever attack, a last-ditch effort to push Karoline into contradicting herself. If she defended Trump's border policies, CNN could label her as supporting harsh treatment of migrants. If she criticized them, she'd have to admit Biden wasn't entirely wrong. Either way, Kate thought she had her. But Karoline was already 10 steps ahead. She took a breath, then leaned forward slightly. And then, with absolute precision, she dropped the line that changed everything. "Kate, let me ask you this." Kate froze. She wasn't expecting this. "When a firefighter puts out a fire, is that the same as an arsonist setting one?" The entire studio reacted. A low ripple of murmurs ran through the audience. Even CNN's own viewers could feel it. Kate blinked. Her jaw tightened. That was not the response she had prepared for. She tried to regain control. She forced a smile. "I'm not sure I follow." Karoline delivered the final blow. "Trump used emergency funds to fix a crisis. Biden is using them to fund one. That's the difference." Boom. A few gasps. A subtle stir in the audience. Even some of CNN's producers behind the scenes were shifting uncomfortably. Kate could feel it slipping away. This was not how this debate was supposed to go. She had to act fast, so she did the only thing left. She cut Karoline off. "Let's move on," she said abruptly, flipping through her notes. The interruption was obvious, and in that moment everyone watching knew exactly what was happening. CNN wasn't conducting an interview anymore. They were trying to shut Karoline down. But Karoline, she just smirked, and that's when everything exploded. The moment Kate Baldwin cut Karoline off, the energy in the studio shifted. It was subtle at first, a murmur from the audience, a glance between producers in the control room. But in seconds, the entire atmosphere had changed. Everyone realized what had just happened. CNN's star host, one of their most seasoned interviewers, had just lost control of the conversation. And worse? She knew it. Kate flipped through her notes aggressively, trying to regain her composure. Let's move on. She tried to sound firm, dismissive, in control, but the damage was already done. Karoline didn't argue. She didn't push back. She simply tilted her head slightly, watching Kate struggle. And then she smiled. That was the moment that sealed it. It wasn't just what Karoline said, it was the way she stayed calm while CNN panicked. The audience, they felt it too. A few shifted in their seats. Some exchanged glances. Even CNN's most loyal viewers could sense it. This was not a conservative spokesperson getting cornered. This was a CNN host scrambling to shut down an argument she wasn't winning. Behind the scenes, producers in the control room were scrambling. "Why did she cut her off?" someone muttered through a headset. "This is bad. This looks really bad." They knew. This was the moment the internet would latch onto. The exact second when CNN went from conducting an interview to censoring their guest. Kate Baldwin tried to push forward. She threw out another question, but her voice had changed. It was tighter, less confident. Karoline wasn't just holding her ground anymore, she was dominating. And for the first time, CNN wasn't controlling the narrative, they were losing it. The moment the interview cut to commercial, CNN thought they had contained it. They couldn't have been more wrong. Because within minutes, the internet was on fire. Clips of the moment Kate Baldwin cut Karoline off started spreading like wildfire. Memes, reaction videos, and commentary flooded social media. #CNN Meltdown began trending nationwide. The footage wasn't just being shared, it was being analyzed, broken down, and replayed frame by frame. Conservatives saw it as undeniable proof that CNN can't handle real debate. Liberals scrambled to defend the network, claiming Karoline was dodging questions. But the raw footage didn't lie. Trending hashtags, #CNN Meltdown, #Karoline exposes CNN, #they cut her off, #fake news fails again. On Twitter, X, major conservative voices pounced immediately. Ben Shapiro, CNN just exposed themselves again. They don't want a debate. They want control. Tucker Carlson, they invited Karoline Leavitt on, lost the argument, and had to shut her down. Unreal. Even Elon Musk chimed in. Interesting how free speech stops when the wrong person is winning. Meanwhile, on YouTube, reaction videos flooded the platform. CNN cuts off Karoline Leavitt live. You won't believe why. Karoline destroys CNN, and they panic. CNN exposed, they had to censor Karoline Leavitt to save themselves. Every major conservative outlet, Fox News, The Daily Wire, Breitbart, Newsmax, ran the story. Fox News headline, CNN panics after Karoline Leavitt shuts down their narrative. Daily Wire, CNN's worst nightmare just happened and it's all caught on camera. Breitbart, CNN cuts the feed. Why did they censor Karoline Leavitt? The most viral clip? The second Karoline smirked after being interrupted. It was turned into GIFs, memes, reaction images. One user tweeted, "That smirk from Karoline says it all. CNN just lost the debate and the internet." 400,000 plus likes. CNN's official response? Silence. They didn't tweet. They didn't issue a statement. They had no idea how to spin this, but it was too late. The damage was done. CNN didn't just lose a debate. They became the debate. And it was about to get even worse. Inside CNN's headquarters, panic had set in. The newsroom was buzzing with tension. Producers, executives, and public relations teams were scrambling. They knew this wasn't just a bad interview. This was a full-blown PR disaster. CNN's credibility had just taken a direct hit, and the internet wasn't letting it go. In a glass-walled conference room, top executives sat around a table, phones buzzing, notifications flooding in. The first reports were coming in from their social media team. The clip is everywhere, over 5 million views in the last 2 hours. Another producer spoke up. Fox News is already running it. They're calling it a meltdown. Kate Baldwin sat in the green room, rubbing her temples, scrolling through Twitter. She knew how this looked. Ending an interview mid-sentence was never a good move. And now the entire internet was saying the same thing. CNN had lost the debate. A senior producer walked in, his face tense. We're getting killed online. Kate sighed, shaking her head. I had to do it. She wasn't answering the question. The producer exhaled sharply. Yeah, well, now everyone thinks we censored her because we were losing. That was the real problem. It didn't matter what actually happened. The public had already made up their minds. CNN's leadership had three options. 1. Ignore the backlash and hope it fades. 2. Release a statement defending the interruption. 3. Try to spin it as an editorial decision to maintain journalistic integrity. None of them were good. The head of PR placed a document on the table. CNN's official statement. Kate scanned it quickly. CNN stands by our commitment to fair and balanced journalism. Our hosts expect direct and factual answers from their guests. When that standard is not met, we reserve the right to end the segment. This was not censorship, this was editorial integrity. It sounded polished, it sounded official. But it wasn't going to work. Because while CNN was in damage control mode, Karoline Leavitt was just getting started. She wasn't scrambling to defend herself, she wasn't making excuses, instead she was capitalizing on the moment. Her team had already clipped the best moments from the debate, her response, Kate Baldwin's growing frustration, and of course the exact second CNN cut her off. Her social media team moved fast. Within hours the clips were edited, captioned, and posted everywhere. The headline was simple, CNN cuts my mic because I was winning. It exploded. Karoline wasn't just reacting to CNN's mistake, she was owning the moment. And CNN? They were scrambling. More emergency meetings, more frantic calls, more producers trying to find a way to contain the damage. But they couldn't, because by the next morning the clip had racked up over 20 million views. By the afternoon it was one of the most watched political moments of the year. And CNN's credibility was in free fall. But this wasn't just a bad news cycle. For CNN, this was something much worse. This was a turning point, one they couldn't undo. While CNN scrambled to contain the damage, Karoline Leavitt was doing the exact opposite. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't defending herself. She was capitalizing on the moment, and the entire country was watching. Her campaign team moved fast. Within minutes of the interview ending, they had clipped the most explosive moments, the exact seconds where Karoline had dominated the conversation and CNN had lost control. The moment Kate Baldwin cut her off. The split second where Karoline smirked knowing exactly what had just happened. And most importantly, the moment CNN's credibility collapsed on live television. They posted it everywhere. The message was simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. CNN cut my mic because I was winning. And just like that, the narrative flipped. In a matter of hours, Karoline wasn't just a campaign spokesperson, she was the story. The clip exploded on social media. On Twitter, X, conservative leaders jumped on it immediately. Ben Shapiro. CNN just exposed themselves again. They don't want a debate. They want control. Tucker Carlson. They invited Karoline Leavitt on, lost the argument, and had to shut her down. Unreal. Elon Musk. Interesting how free speech stops when the wrong person is winning. Even people who weren't political started commenting on it. One viral post simply read, "You don't have to agree with Karoline Leavitt to see what just happened. CNN lost. Badly." That post alone racked up over 500,000 likes. Facebook and Instagram flooded with reaction videos, memes, and breakdowns. On YouTube, political commentators rushed to capitalize on the moment. Trending videos included, "CNN cuts off Karoline Leavitt live, you won't believe why." Karoline destroys CNN, and they panic. CNN exposed. They had to censor Karoline Leavitt to save themselves. In the first 12 hours, the clip had racked up over 15 million views. By the next morning, that number had doubled. And CNN? They had no response. They didn't issue a statement. They didn't post a defense. They did what every major corporation does when they know they've lost. They went silent. But it was too late. Every major conservative outlet, Fox News, The Daily Wire, Breitbart, Newsmax, ran the story. Fox News headline, "Karoline Leavitt destroys CNN, they had to cut her off." Daily Wire, "CNN couldn't handle the truth. Karoline Leavitt humiliates host." Breitbart, "CNN's worst nightmare just happened, and they did it to themselves." Even liberal media struggled to defend CNN's decision. CNN's attempt to shut her down had done the exact opposite. It had amplified her voice. She wasn't just another political spokesperson anymore. She was a national figure. Her social media exploded. Her Twitter X following tripled overnight. Her name was everywhere. Requests poured in from conservative news outlets, Fox News, Newsmax, The Daily Wire, The Megyn Kelly Show. Everyone wanted her. Karoline wasn't just reacting to CNN's mistake. She was owning the moment. And the Biden administration, they were silent. They had nothing to say. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. CNN had invited Karoline on to discredit her. Instead, they had made her famous, and that's when Trump's campaign made their move. They saw what had just happened. They saw the momentum Karoline had. And within 48 hours, they made a major announcement. Karoline Leavitt was now one of the leading voices for Trump's 2024 media strategy. It was official. She wasn't just a rising star in conservative politics. She was now one of the most powerful voices in the movement. And CNN. They had just accidentally made her famous. Inside the network, executives were in full-blown panic mode. They had spent years crafting their image, years trying to maintain their credibility, and in just one interview, Karoline had torn it all down, and she did it without even raising her voice. She didn't yell, she didn't lash out. She simply let CNN destroy themselves. And now, she was everywhere. By the next morning, Karoline's name was on every major news website. Even liberal outlets, CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, were forced to cover it. They couldn't ignore it. Because this wasn't just a debate. It was a cultural moment. One that was shifting the political conversation. She had stood up to CNN, exposed their tactics, and walked away stronger. And now, CNN was the one dealing with the fallout. Because for the first time in a long time, the media wasn't controlling the conversation. Karoline was. CNN had survived controversies before. They had weathered political scandals, on-air meltdowns, even lawsuits. But this wasn't just another tough news cycle. This wasn't just another hit piece from conservative media. This was something worse. Because this time the evidence was undeniable. This time the footage spoke for itself. And millions of Americans had already seen it. The moment Kate Baldwin cut off Karoline Leavitt, the damage was already done. But CNN didn't realize how bad it was until they saw the numbers. Inside CNN's headquarters, panic turned into desperation. Viewership numbers were leaking internally. They weren't just bad. They were catastrophic. The night of the interview, CNN's primetime ratings had dropped to one of their lowest levels in years. Viewership plummeted 30% overnight. 30%. For a network that had already been struggling to compete with Fox News, this wasn't just a bad week, this was a collapse. Inside a glass-walled boardroom, CNN executives sat in stunned silence. A meeting that was supposed to be a routine ratings discussion had turned into a full-scale emergency. The head of analytics stood at the front of the room holding a report. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. "It's worse than we thought." An executive leaned forward. "How bad?" The analyst took a breath. "Our primetime slot dropped 30% overnight. The morning show is down 22%, and engagement across social media is collapsing." A senior producer sitting at the far end of the table rubbed his forehead. 30%? The analyst nodded. 30%. Another executive shook his head, disbelief in his eyes. That doesn't just happen. Not overnight. But it had. And it wasn't just a temporary dip. The network's reputation had taken a direct hit, and this time there was no easy way out. For years, CNN had fought against accusations of bias, of agenda-driven reporting, of shutting down conservative voices. They had denied it every step of the way. They had dismissed complaints as right-wing talking points, but now the entire country had watched them do it, live on air. There was no spinning this, no editing, no reframing the narrative. For years, CNN had carefully curated its image. They were supposed to be the serious news network, the place where real journalism happened. But this wasn't journalism. This was a meltdown. And the viewers knew it. The moment the numbers leaked, media insiders jumped on the story. Variety published an article. CNN faces viewer exodus after controversial interview cutoff. The New York Post ran with, "CNN's biggest ratings drop in years. Is the network in trouble?" Even liberal-leaning outlets couldn't spin it. The Washington Post headline read, "CNN's strategy backfires. Did cutting off Karoline Leavitt hurt their brand?" And then the leaks started. A CNN producer anonymously spoke to a media outlet. "No one inside the building thinks this is going away. Everyone is panicking. We lost control of the story." Another CNN staffer admitted, "If the network doesn't fix this, we could be looking at a permanent audience shift." For a network that had already been bleeding viewers to alternative media sources, this was a nightmare. But it got even worse, because CNN wasn't just losing viewers. Their own talent started to turn against them. A well-known CNN host off the record told a journalist this was a mistake. Cutting off Karoline mid-sentence, we played right into conservative hands. For a network that prided itself on credibility, this was a disaster. Meanwhile, over at Fox News, their viewership was skyrocketing. They ran segment after segment on how CNN had been exposed for what it really was. One Fox News analyst summed it up perfectly. CNN thought they were controlling the conversation. Instead, they just showed the world they can't handle a debate. And the worst part? The more CNN tried to move on, the more people kept bringing it back up. The clip of Karoline wasn't fading from the internet. It was growing. Every time CNN tried to change the conversation, someone would post the footage again. And then, the advertisers started calling. Companies that had long bought ad space on CNN's primetime shows were now reconsidering. Because in the world of television, nothing matters more than credibility. And CNN's credibility, it had never been lower. Inside CNN's newsroom, executives knew the truth. This wasn't just a controversy. This was a collapse, a self-inflicted wound they might never recover from, because for years CNN had been accusing others of spreading misinformation, of avoiding real debate. But now, millions of Americans had seen it for themselves, and they weren't buying CNN's excuses anymore. This wasn't just about one interview. This was about trust, and CNN had just lost more of it than ever before, because this wasn't just a mistake. It was a defining moment, one that would haunt CNN for years to come.